Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 of The Holistic Path. I'm Laura, part owner of Clover's Natural Market and longtime student of herbalism and nutrition.
I'm Nellie and I've been at Clover's for 19 years and I have a passion for helping people empower themselves through knowledge and taking their health into their own hands.
And I'm Felicia, or Fee. I am a certified health and wellness coach, and I'm just here to inspire people to find joy in the health and wellness journey through mindful lifestyle decisions.
And just a little note on what we're doing here with the Holistic Path, what our mission is. It is to go beyond the supplement shelf and the TikTok trends and the one-size-fits-all quick fix approaches to health and healing that we are so accustomed to in our industry. Instead, dig deeper into some of the most common health concerns of our time, using the collective wisdom that we have about herbal remedies, nutrition, lifestyle practices, and supplements, ways that can help you improve your health, vitality, and quality of life. We are not doctors. We are health enthusiasts and educators, and our goal is not to treat, prevent, or cure disease, but to enable healthy life through healthy practices and mindful living. Okay, so that is our mission on the Holistic Path, and today our focus is a big one, maybe one of the biggest ones, and that is digestive health. We came to this topic because our focus for the past month has been on the foundations of health. So when we think about foundations of health, I think about sleep, I think about diet, nutrition, I think about mitigating stress, mindfulness, I think about joy and connection. And we were trying to choose kind of a topic amongst all these giant topics, and it came to me after honestly having some digestive upset myself that canceled one of our meetings to work on the Holistic Path, that digestive health is really the place where everything meets, and where any imbalances really start to show up, and also where any imbalances really begin to happen is in our guts.
Absolutely. Just from my own personal experience, there's a time and place for seeking medical advice and things like that, but I took that route initially, not feeling like myself after giving birth to my son, and already dealing with anxiety and depression throughout life. Those issues kind of started to exasperate, and I was trying to get to the root cause. I would go to the doctor and they would be like, okay, well, we can give you this script for anxiety, we can give you this for depression. But I started to get more in tune with myself and listen to what my body was actually saying and doing when in those moments of stress. It's kind of out of my own curiosity, but that drove me to do more research on the connection between feeling things in your gut and actual gut health. My doctors never really asked about my diet or how that played a role in the experiences that I was having. So definitely think a major part of that cornerstone of digestive health is mood regulation, and it directly influences our mood regulation also.
Yeah, I came to this whole natural health, aside from having a childhood based in the principles of macrobiotic philosophy and diet. I came to college and got really sick and started developing bone spurs. And they were like, well, surgery, you gotta just have them cut off and they'll just come back. And at the same time, I was, of course, eating whatever I wanted. Like, I'd never had dorm food. Like, you could have cereal all the meals of the day, frozen yogurt and bagels. And I was having heartburn so severe. I was just popping Tums like crazy, feeling worse and worse, gaining 35 pounds, having extreme anxiety, sluggishness, unable to function. And over the course of a year, these bone spurs popped up. And after having surgery, which took a long time to recover, the whole thing with surgery, I had more bone spurs, so it's going to be more surgeries. And I stumbled across a book that talked about a condition of not having enough stomach acid contributing to heel spurs. And I got myself a product that had HCl in it, the first day I took it, my heartburn went away. And I've been dumping calcium through Tums into my already too alkaline stomach.
Mm-hmm.
I started reabsorbing the calcium deposits that were bone spurs. They dissolved, so I didn't have to have more surgeries. I didn't have heartburn anymore. My whole digestive life changed because my stomach had enough acid in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It seems to be like a pretty common story. One of my main introductions for myself and changing my health and trying to change my diet and become wiser in the ways of taking care of myself was also just chronic digestive pain due to a chronically malnourished, overfed and malnourished diet as a kid. And if you have chronic digestive pain, which so many people do, then you know that if you weren't miserable already, then you will be miserable.
It's cumulative.
It's cumulative.
Yeah.
It takes away from your quality of life in a dramatic way. If you can't comfortably do things in life because you're always feeling bloated, or you have irritable bowel and so you're constipated, or you are running to the bathroom all the time, or everything you eat is causing discomfort. These things are becoming more and more common all the time. And there's a host of things that contribute to that we can look at and will look at, including stress, as we talked about, use of antacids, which Nellie just talked about, growing food intolerances, and not to mention environmental toxins that we are exposed to, whether we like it or not, that are inflammatory and can cause ulcerative issues in the digestive system. So this is something that we are really facing collectively as a species right now. It's getting hard to be comfortable eating food, and something that we have to do. So it's a big topic. It's a big topic, and it impacts every other area of our health, as we'll talk about here in a moment. So just to begin, diet and digestive health. Clearly there's a connection there. It's pretty clear that what we put into our bodies is going to have a pretty big impact on our digestive system.
It'll blow your doctor's mind if you suggest it. Like, what, huh? It doesn't matter what you eat.
Yeah.
I have had a doctor say it doesn't matter what you eat to me. I'm just like, oh, that's so disconnect.
Yeah, how could that be true?
How could that be true?
How could that be true? The reality is that even if you eat a relatively healthy diet, you're doing all the things that you're eating fermented foods, you're eating lots of plants, you're eating lots of different colors of the rainbow, you're doing those things, you could still have digestive issues. Yeah. Because what you eat is part of the battle, and the other part is what you absorb.
Absolutely.
And that has to do with just what Nellie was saying, with having good stomach acid, a good amount of digestive enzymes, all kinds of other things go into your ability to absorb foods. And a lot of things can cause malabsorption issues.
And just to touch on this idea of what you eat, what you don't eat, and what you absorb, the third factor is what you think about what you eat, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think everything's toxin around every corner, it means your stress, your cortisol, endocrine system is amped up, you're scared, your body just is in fight or flight, and then you can't assimilate any nutrients from anything. So having a healthy mindset around food is a huge part of the puzzle when trying to figure out your own stability. So backing away from extreme beliefs about your food has made a huge difference for me, because the way that we think influences our endocrine system, our cortisol levels. This connection is so real. You won't absorb anything if you stress about every bite you put in your mouth.
Yeah, I think there's a very toxic culture around food and diets specifically. And body image, and also a lack of inclusivity when it comes to things like food aversions and neurodivergencies, which can contribute to texture issues and comfortability. Eating in public places, that's a part of health for a lot of people, is that social fabric. And most times what people do or like to do when they socialize is eat, but no one really stops to think about the person who does have body image issues or is trying to not make everyone uncomfortable with the gurgling noises coming
Sure.
from their,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
their gut because their
social
anxiety is,
aspect.
there's a
Exactly.
lot of pressures around that.
There's a lot of anxiety with food, and not just in the neurodivergent community, which, I have a partner who he is most certainly neurodivergent, and that AFRID is the acronym. I forget what it stands for right now, but it's an anxiety disorder surrounding certain food and extreme pickiness. So think of the kid who is only going to eat chicken nuggets, like they will not eat anything else, and that this is very real, and learning how to deal with that compassionately, and also often with a lot of concern. If you are a parent, and you have a kid who just cannot, will not go outside of their comfort zone, they're not getting the nutrients they want. First of all, you just got to keep them eating what they will eat,
And sneaking things in.
things in.
That's one of my favorites.
We have a list of worst foods.
Yeah.
that everyone knows.
Yeah. And coming up with ways that feel safe for them,
And there's no better time for like packaged foods. Now, there's all these great options. If your child has a texture thing or a flavor thing, you don't have to go to McDonald's to get a pretty tasty chicken nugget that doesn't have bad fats and rancid oils and God knows what the actual content of the meat is.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as what's available, we're in a new age of how we can broaden the spectrum of nutrients that people are getting.
And if you can just do something that's comforting for them, but just slightly better, what
Healthy
if they,
swaps.
if they only will eat, only eat grilled cheese sandwich, what kind of veggies can you sneak in there that maybe wouldn't be noticed? My mom used to grate carrots and red peppers and put them into the grilled cheese sandwich, and you didn't really notice it, it wasn't really there. My partner, who has a lot of food sensitivities and a lot of food anxiety, he will eat kale if I saute it with garlic and soy sauce. And I will put it on his pizzas, I will put it in his sandwiches, and he doesn't really notice it. But this is a big challenge. This is a huge challenge, just getting the good foods to people, especially when there's so much anxiety. And on the other side of this, I kind of, just want to touch back. You talked a little bit about, both of you just talked a little bit about food anxiety in relation to becoming very restrictive with your foods. The other side of this, not maybe someone who is afraid of food and will only eat chicken nuggets, but someone who is afraid of food being bad for them in a broad way. And perhaps even they have found maybe you are this person, you found out recently that you have allergies to a host of whole different foods. And this is a big issue. The growing list of food intolerances. And I kind of want to dive into this topic a little bit right now, because I truly believe that if you find out that you're allergic to every single grain, you're allergic to fructose, you're allergic to, just everything under the sun, eggs, nuts, dairy,
Sesame seeds are big right now.
Yeah, all these things. If that is you, then I would like to suggest a mind frame change from I have to find a diet that can suit me to I need to heal my gut because there's a chronic inflammatory condition going on that is creating leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah, which is where the single cell that makes up the interior lining of your gut, where the space between the cells becomes gapped, and those junctures, what they call them, are open, so the cells have room between them where particles of food, bad bacteria, toxins from our food seep into what is supposed to be a receiving area for actual nutrients. And the body's like, red flag, red flag. We got poison going down here. Even though it's food, it's too big a particle usually. And so if we can heal the juncture of the cell wall lining of the intestinal tract and get those little villi hairs all active in the small intestine so they're absorbing as much nutrient as possible, it's a game changer. And there are some good foods for that that probably aren't on your list.
There's some good foods for that, and there's also there's great herbs for that, there's great supplements for that. And it also doesn't mean that you should avoid the trigger foods, or you should stop avoiding trigger foods altogether, because you're going to need to keep track of the foods that are upsetting for you in the meantime, and that might mean you have to have a restrictive diet. But that's kind of one of the things we're going to dig in today is like, how can we heal and restore a gut that has had so much inflammation, so much abrasion to it, that we're no longer digesting food properly. The nutrients are actually seeping out into the bloodstream in a way they're not supposed to, and that's causing an allergic reaction and inflammation and discomfort. This is one of the biggest things that I'm really running into often now at the store, is like this leaky gut and all the kind of the host of symptoms that come along with it. And another big one is SIBO, which is a chronic pathogenic overgrowth of bacteria that is often connected to usually low stomach acid.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, we're talking about it, proton pump inhibitors, using Tums all the time. This can cause actually too little stomach acid, and that can allow for all kinds of things, including nutrients not being absorbed properly, as well as the ability for pathogenic bacteria to take over because the stomach is too alkaline. And you then can get things like H. pylori, which can cause ulcers, and you can also then get things like SIBO, which is this ecosystem disruption where all your friendly bacteria is out the door, and instead you got a bunch of gross farting.
It's very uncomfortable. Your whole abdomen swells. It can be a long time before they figure out to even test for it too.
Yeah, and foods that can be really good for you normally can become very uncomfortable for you. So these are some of the things that we face when we're looking at diet and digestive health, and some of the areas where it can be a little bit less straightforward than just doing what we know how to do, which is, avoiding fried foods, avoiding foods that are high in saturated fats, avoiding artificial sweeteners, avoiding too many refined sugars and grains. All of these foods actually disrupt your gut microbiome. If you eat lots of really high fried foods and a lot of saturated fats, you're going to have to produce more bile, and that production of bile actually will change the bacteria in your stomach. So it's bacteria that can live in a high bile environment, and that's pathogenic bacteria. So avoiding those sorts of foods, focusing on the good foods, which include fermented foods, making sure you're getting enough fiber, foods that are rich in polyphenols, so antioxidants that play a really protective role in the body, especially in the gut. Seafood, rich in omega-3s, lots of plants. We can do these things, but they're still, even if you're doing all those things, there's still, and this is kind of the point that we're talking about, these areas where that becomes less simple, less straightforward, and where it might not be enough, unfortunately, especially because, as mentioned, there's environmental toxins that we are exposed to all the time, even if we are eating as clean as possible, and those toxins can cause ulcerations in the gut.
And they can be higher in certain foods.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point also, I think that while it is very important that we make sure that we're eating these foods, the fermented foods, fiber-rich foods, there have been a lot of studies recently that are showing that colorectal cancers are skyrocketing in people under 40. And a lot of the research suggests they're finding that we don't focus enough in our diet on fiber. Like, I think we can kind of hyper focus, and again, a part of the diet culture is the focus is protein, fats, carbs, proteins, fat, carbs. Whether you're going to do keto, whether you're going to do intermittent fasting, whatever it is, that's solely the focus. I would argue that fiber and the micronutrient content is probably more important than obsessing over those macronutrient components of health, because the fiber is going to make sure that everything flows properly. It's going to make sure that you're able to get rid of any of those environmental toxins, or if you do happen to have, a meal that's high in these hydrogenated oils, saturated fats, it's going to make sure that everything flows smoothly and is able to be excreted and expelled out of the body. Yeah. If not, we're literally full of crap.
And you're talking about insoluble fiber, which you think of like psyllium, oat bran. That's oat bran's soluble fiber, but fibers that are recommended that people take, like Metamucil is a name brand.
Supplements.
And also like fiber-rich foods like leafy greens and grains and all the things that keep toxins moving. If you get stuck, you reabsorb.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. And then you're really poisoning yourself. The other part of that is like these big fibers, but there's also soluble fibers found in tons of foods that you don't even realize they're in there, and they're food for probiotics. So they're called prebiotics, and they're in things like oatmeal and apples. Apple pectin's a soluble fiber. They go way beyond digestion in that they help with things like cholesterol levels and liver fat, the health of your arteries. In your digestive tract, they nourish probiotics. Probiotics use them to make neurotransmitters. It's like, which is again a direct link to your brain.
Yeah. Brain gut connection.
So fiber is a broad thing, and it's hardly ever talked about until you're in trouble.
Yeah. Too late.
We have
sometimes.
such a carb phobic kind of dietary trend right now that people just kind of they're ignoring fiber. And I've actually heard from one of my favorite herbal teachers that fiber is actually the nutrient that most Americans are deficient in. It's not macronutrient, I should say. It's not protein. It is good, high quality fiber. So this is huge, and I think we think of fiber, we think of carbs as inherently bad, but without that roughage to feed a good bacteria, to absorb waste and remove them from the body, and also to slow down these complex carbohydrates, to slow down the release of glucose into the bloodstream and give us sustained energy. So there's a reason why the saying is an apple a day keeps a doctor away. There's a lot of fiber in an apple. It's very filling. It's
soluble and insoluble.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these sorts of things, eating oatmeal, yes, it has carbs in it, but it is fiber rich, it's nutrient rich. It really does help to keep your digestive moving. What good does it do you if you're trying to keep slim and trim, but you're never going to the bathroom? You're going to feel bloated. So fiber is a big one.
And we talk to people every day, and one person's regular, it may be regular to them, but it can be toxic.
Yeah.
And so, like, figuring out a way to talk about regularity in a way that's inclusive and not disgusting, and before you have a crisis, and just getting enough fiber, having the right amount of stomach acid, I take enzymes because they help dissolve things in your stomach beyond just acid, and there's enzymes that break down fibers, so you have less sort of bloating, less gas, and you're like upset from fibers. There's enzymes that break down carbohydrates, amylase. Probiotics in your microbiome from your small intestine down, they produce enzymes. So they're further working on the food, getting everything broken down. It's just so fascinating.
It is fascinating. It's a whole, our digestive system is complex. It's an ecosystem. There's many different players in there, and diversity is good. Diversity in the food that you eat, diversity in the bacteria that you have. You don't want a sterile gut. Like, sterility is the
collapse.
Yeah, it's a collapse. It's the enemy of life. It's the same. Think about your soil in your garden. If it is sterilized, it means it has no nutrients and it can't.
Might be the root of all our problems, actually.
Yeah, and that's the thesis here. What we're talking about is digestive health is, for a lot of things, it's the root of a lot of problems, and there's a lot of chronic diseases that can be linked back to digestive health. Autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia,
cancers, several different cancers,
mood disorders. I mean, it's big.
Tons of research just since COVID on microbiome homeostasis and recovering from viruses. Long COVID rates, people recovered in 30 to 60 days completely if they had a healthy microbiome. So we're learning more all the time. And these studies are pretty easy to look up. Unfortunately, there's sort of a level of dysbiosis that will often require a supplement to like reboot. If you have SIBO or an imbalance, a candida, something that's overgrown, that's not supposed to be there, then sometimes like doing zero out, whether it's a really strong round of antibiotics or it's grapefruit seed extract or some herb that's strong at killing pathogens, and then reintroducing your good gut flora through a pill. Unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at. So
a lot of these things do take time, and with SIBO, you also might find that, and with leaky gut, where you might have tons of food intolerances, that you will have to have a restrictive diet for some amount of time. And for SIBO, the diet is called a FODMAP diet. It is very restrictive and very hard, but can be very important, because what you're trying to do is starve off that pathogenic bacteria by not feeding it all these prebiotic fibers that we were just talking about.
that it loves.
Because that fiber is indiscriminate. It's a buffet for any bacteria, good or bad. And so that means not eating things like onion, not eating things like garlic, and then add some of these other supplements and herbs, maybe some neem, maybe some Oregon grapefruit, maybe some golden seal, these really these bitter and antiseptic herbs that can help get rid of the pathogenic bacteria so you can rebuild. You kind of got to get the moldy floorboards out so you can put the new flooring in.
And something that really, really helped me understand what was triggering my gut dysbiosis was a food diary. A lot of people use these when they're on specific diets or trying to lose weight specifically or gain weight, but I think that food planners can be beneficial for just about anyone, just for you to identify what kind of makes you gassy. You notice migraines after, you're eating your favorite meal. Maybe you'll start to see a pattern in that and be able to take preventative actions to keep it from exasperating into something like a leaky gut syndrome. Another big thing that I don't think we pay enough attention to is that people really don't take the time to enjoy and actually digest their food. Like, we're not chewing long enough to be able to break it down into pieces for our body to properly assimilate and break down and use those macro and micronutrients that we're getting from those things. So yes, eat the good stuff, but actually make sure that you're using every part of the digestive system in the GI tract, because there's a lot of players in there, and they start way up there.
And if you're, if you think about a meal where you're enjoying yourself, you're stretching out the course of your meal, you may be talking with each other, that's slowing it down. That sort of a meal is so nourishing on so many levels that you can maybe get away with a food that might, be more triggering because you've chewed it slower. Maybe you're enjoying it in sort of a heightened state of maybe a little dopamine from just connecting with people. And that could be something that you could include in your food journal. Like, how long did it take me to eat this meal? Was I rushed? Because our brain tricks us all the time. My brain will completely block out something that I ate because, of course, it was between 10:30 and midnight. I didn't eat that yesterday. It was like a zero zone.
I just had a bite, another bite, another bite.
So like once you start to chart these things, you'll see another connection, which is like the endocrine system and the gut. And I do believe men can notice these things too. I think we're going to learn more about men's cycles, but they get a lot of attention, so we'll just talk about ours. And keeping a food journal with specific sort of symptoms that you might have, whether they're headaches or muscle pain or irritability, and putting it on a calendar, like where it's not just like all these days I ate these things and I felt this way, but then seeing what the female cycle is doing over the course of that time can help you mitigate horrible digestive stuff around PMS, around ovulation. So I agree.